Welcome in then to the latest edition of ESPN FC on the day that La Liga confirmed. For the first time ever in the history of the competition, a game will be played outside of Spain. Villarreal taking on Barcelona on December the 20th at the Hard Rock Stadium in Miami. I'm sure... Well, you'll be there for sure. Shaka,
I'm just going.
Craig Burley, of course, will be there as well. The game which will be live on ESPN. Big build-up, I'm sure, ahead to what is a historic moment in the history of Spain. For more on this, Fernando Palomo, ESPN Deportes reporter, spoke more to Tebas.
Para nosotros era importante intentar conseguir este hito porque estratégicamente nos ayuda mucho a crecer la marca de la Liga, ¿no? Primero porque venimos a un país como Estados Unidos donde hay una masa de aficionados de la Liga elevadísima, ¿no? Y eso bien lo sabes tú como comentarista de la Liga. Yo creo que tenemos que acercar nuestro fútbol español en directo a aquellos lugares donde tengamos una masa social importante. Limitado, nosotros nos autolimitamos a uno por temporada y intentando rotarlo por el mundo, y creo que eso es bueno para todos, para la industria, para la Liga, para el fútbol en general.
El fútbol de Estados Unidos, que va a albergar al final en una de sus ciudades un partido de la Liga Española, ¿qué beneficios puede llegar a obtener de la experiencia y del evento histórico?
¿Y por qué no la MLS se puede convertir en ese nivel de liga? No viene a quitar espacio a la MLS, sino viene a apoyar y ayudar. Una visión que es para mí muy equivocada es pensar que un partido de la Liga Española viene a quitar espacio a la MLS. No, ojalá podamos hacer algo en conjunto con la MLS en esos planes que estamos haciendo, ¿no?
Well, for more on this announcement, to get the US perspective, we welcome in Jeff Carlisle. But first, let's get the reaction in Spain, shall we, Alex? What are people saying about this?
Yeah, I think there's a range of opinion here, like there is on this issue everywhere, Dan. There's been a feeling here, I think, for a long time here, this is kind of inevitable. This is the latest step. Of course, the biggest step came a few days earlier when UEFA basically said, we don't love this idea, but we feel like we can't block it. And it's going ahead. It's something the league have been working on for going on for a decade now. Go back to 2018, this was first proposed, and now it's finally happening. I think you'll see some fans who are opposed to it for different reasons. Some fans feel like clubs here are kind of deeply rooted in communities, and games shouldn't be taken out of those communities. Others will point to the issue of kind of fairness and say, well, look, you've got a game here which would be an away game for Barcelona at Villarreal. Is now going to be played on neutral territory, and in some ways might feel like a home game because so many fans there, of course, in Miami will be Barca fans. Others, I think it's a positive in terms of growing the league, about bringing Spanish football to the world and looking to compete with the Premier League and elsewhere. And there's an element, I think, of pride in that, in saying, look, US, this massive market, they want to see more of Spanish football. So I think there's all kinds of opinions. There has been some opposition, of course, to this from the likes of Real Madrid. There have been questions from the Players' Union as well about the impact of this travelling on the players. There may still be, further kind of legal challenges to this and otherwise. But like I say, for a long time here, the feeling has been like this is going to happen. And today, this is a pretty decisive step.
What do you think, Craig?
I think traditionalists will be spitting feathers, and I kind of would consider myself a bit of a traditionalist when it comes to, this sport. But as Alex said, there feels like there's an inevitability about it with not just this but other sports. You take the NFL, for example. It's played in Mexico, it's played in Germany, it's played in London. Mm-hmm. It just feels that this is the way, whether we like it or not, this is how some of the leagues around the world, some of the elite level leagues, are trying to build the product, trying to push the product for more financial gain, for more strength in their own league, for a bigger platform, even though they have a huge platform. So, and obviously us being living here in the US, we're not really going to complain about it, but I can see sort of both sides, and there's no surprise Real Madrid are going to complain about everything, aren't they? Particularly if they're not involved. I don't think, if you'd have said to me 10 years ago, I don't think it's an ideal scenario, but we're seeing this sort of decision in other sports, and we've seen it discussed from the Premier League, we've seen this discussed from the La Liga, and obviously now it's going to happen. So, and the fact that in regards to Major League Soccer, if one game a year in your country is going to screw your league up, then I'm afraid you don't have a league to start with. So growing the game, or trying to grow the game, or trying to get more interest in the game, is not a bad thing. But I know there'll be a lot of people in Spain, as there would be in England if they took a game to here in the US or anywhere else around the world, would be spitting feathers at the fact that this is not what we should do. You know, the game should be played in England. So I see it from that side, but I also see it from a monetary side and a growing the game side as well. So good for US fans.
My question, I have so many questions about this. Okay, while
A long show yesterday. We don't
well,
want
I'll try to keep it short.
December 20th it kicks off.
while I understand this kind of premise that is trying to be sold, that it's good for La Liga, I see how it's good for Barcelona, I see how it's good for Villarreal. I don't see how it's good for Alaves. I don't see how it's good for Getafe. If somebody could explain that to me, I'll be willing to listen. And
Does it not set a precedent for those teams then? It opens the door for them to travel in seasons to come.
Well, I'm sure it will, but how many people are going to go watch Alaves and Getafe outside of Alaves and Getafe? It's a short answer to that. And then, for me, again, league football is built on a fairly simple competitive premise. You play 19 games at home, you play 19 away. Now this kind of goes outside of that, on again, a premise that I don't fully understand, that is meant to grow the league in its entirety. Now, for me, you are selling this game on foreign soil for a cash injection. Now, what's stopping Real Madrid from doing similarly? And going to Saudi Arabia, what's stopping anybody in Spanish football just putting out one league game a season to the highest bidder? For me, it just opens up a can of worms that I'm not sure anybody's kind of thinking of. They're seeing this very short-termist, very kind of blinkered, and I don't see how it's good for the sport, for the league in general.
On the opposite side of that, obviously, Jeff, this is great for the US soccer audience.
Absolutely. I mean, if you've got a chance to see Barcelona play a competitive match on US soil, regardless of who the opponent is, I mean, that's going to be a feast for the eyes for American soccer fans, no doubt about it. I think if you're MLS, you're probably a little less enthused. You know, certainly all of this is going to depend on how many of these games are actually going to be held in the U.S. Is this going to be a one-off every year, you know, for leagues like La Liga or the Bundesliga or the Premier League? Or are we going to see, you know, dozens of games? I mean, I think Liga MX in Mexico, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how they try to take advantage of this situation, because they've been playing friendlies in the United States for years that have been very well attended. And especially given Club America's stadium situation, where, you know, they might have to look for a different home venue for a while. You know, they could be playing games in the United States. I mean, that's one idea that has been floated. So, you know, but I think, you know, if you're MLS, you kind of accept this. I don't know if this is going to do too much to the weekly attendance that a typical MLS team enjoys. I think if it's a competition like the Leagues Cup, I think that could be impacted a little bit more and maybe siphon away interest, you know, from that particular competition.
I don't think people realise outside of the US, they maybe think, well, you know, Major League Soccer over here, how much interest is it? You know, I know the Premier League is very popular, La Liga is popular, all that sort of stuff, but I don't think people realise the appetite for soccer over here. And it's only when these teams come and play in these pre-season friendlies that we've covered, and it used to be the ICC competition or whatever it was, and you could go to Michigan, I was up in Michigan, there's 110,000 there for Chelsea Real Madrid, a friendly, a pre-season, doesn't matter where you go. The appetite is there. I think there is a concern, and I think to Shaka's point, is that where does it stop? Is it one game this year from La Liga? Is it 2? Is it 4? Is it 6 next year? You know what I mean? Where does it stop? And I think that's the worry if you're looking at it from a Spanish perspective, somebody that's been from generation to generation of family going to watch Real Sociedad or whoever it is, Villarreal. Where does this end? And I think that is the concern. At some point, there has to be a cut-off that money isn't the most important thing. You know, I'm 50-50 on this. It's going to happen. I think we have to get used to it. There's going to be a lot of complaining about it, probably internally, from other La Liga teams. But in terms of, you know, seeing a competitive match with star players this side of the pond, as Jeff just said, it's going to be very exciting for the people turning up and the people watching on TV.
Let's get some players' reactions, shall we? At the Spain camp at the moment, Reno and Cucurella.
Es un poco extraño, nunca se ha hecho, pero como dice Merino, yo creo que en una parte puede ser bueno porque al final llevas un espectáculo que a nivel nacional a otra parte del mundo, gente que quizás vive ahí que no ha tenido la posibilidad de viajar o hacerse un viaje tan largo para ver un partido de liga, pues lo llevas ahí y quizás pues es el principio de algo que puede también ayudar a fútbol español, sobre todo pues quizás en un plano más económico.
Que tampoco es malo para la liga, no es malo para el fútbol español poder enseñarse en otros lugares, poder enseñar la calidad que hay en nuestra liga, el nivel de jugadores que tenemos, siempre y cuando todos estén de acuerdo y haya soluciones también para esos aficionados que igual se pueden quedar sin ver un partido en casa que les haría ilusión, ¿no? Eso ya son temas suyos, cómo pueden afrontarlo para que todo el mundo esté contento en la medida de lo posible, pero desde luego que esa exposición me parece siempre muy positiva para el fútbol español.
You know, I don't know if he did in his interview with Fernando Palomo. I may have missed it, I don't know. But I think it would be important before and after this particular event in December that he outlines where the benefits are and shows the benefits to Spanish football, to La Liga, to the teams, from various perspectives.
I think his idea is you have one of these games a year, basically, and you take it around the world, wherever it may
I
be.
get what his idea is.
Annually, and therefore there's more eyes on La Liga. It brings more interest into Spanish football.
What chance is that one game a year always includes Barcelona Real Madrid?
Well, absolutely. It will always happen.
So the primary beneficiaries of this are Barcelona and Real Madrid.
But financially, obviously, like Villarreal are going to get money from this.
Villarreal and whoever else is the opponent.
Exactly.
But there are 20 teams in this league. Now, my question continues to be, how does this benefit the league in its entirety?
How does it filter down?
Exactly. If you're selling it as benefiting La Liga, then tell me how it benefits all 20 teams. I see how it benefits Barcelona. Great. I see how it benefits Villarreal. Great. I see how it benefits the US fans. I'm loving that idea. I have no issue with that. But don't sell it on the premise of this is beneficial to La Liga and no one can see how it gets outside of those two teams for this 1 year, especially if you're selling it as one game a year. No, again, you're talking Real Madrid, Barcelona against, it'll be 9 years or 18 years or whatever it is against each opponent in the league. I just don't get it.
I know it's not going to. I know we've got the boys. I know it's not going to happen. But if you really wanted to make a statement, you know the game that had to happen here.
Yeah, El Clasico, obviously.
Yeah.
You really wanted to make a statement about growing the game. Now I don't know the logistical problems of how if that ever could happen. Certainly not this year. But that, if you're going to do it, in my opinion, that would have been the big statement. That is a bigger outreach. That is making the biggest of statements, but that is the premier game, not only in Spain but arguably around the world. So that's a big ask. That is a big ask. But again, I go back to that. This point is, don't just tell me that more people are going to watch. There has to be some hard and fast figures of to where this is going to benefit the teams and everybody else involved in it. At the end of the day, not just bluff and bluster. Well, the more people watch there, more people. Is your TV deals better? Is your commercial deals better? Is the money filtering down the league? If they can show that's happening, then it's difficult to say it's a bad idea.
I suppose financially, you take a look at the top 6 teams in the Premier League. The top 20 teams in the Premier League. They are so superior to that of Spain. This is about La Liga.
In terms of money.
Exactly.
Not in terms of quality.
No, but exactly. But this is the problem. This is how they're looking to financially compete with the Premier League, which is on an absolute different level when it comes to the finances that they create. And I suppose, Alex, this is one avenue that La Liga is going to try and explore to try and close that gap and try and help those teams out that don't bring in the sort of revenue that Barcelona and Real Madrid do.
Yeah, a couple of things just to react to what you guys have been saying. Of course, the big issue with bringing a Clasico overseas right now is Real Madrid. Their relationship with the league is effectively broken. Madrid won't agree to any La Liga initiative like this, leaving aside the fact that, would Madrid or Barca give up a home Clasico to play a neutral Clasico. It's hard to see that happening. What you were saying about the money the teams involved will make from this, interesting listening to Villarreal executives talking today. They were saying they don't view this as a money spinner in the short term, maybe in the longer term in terms of building the club's profile. But of course, Villarreal also have to compensate their season ticket holders for losing a big home game against Barcelona. They're going to have to, any season ticket holders they've said who want to go, they will pay for their trip to Miami. And also those who don't want to go get money off their season tickets. So financially, Villarreal are also taking something of a hit on this. So they view this as sort of a longer term benefit rather than a short term money spinner. And you're right, in terms of bringing these games overseas, it's going to be Madrid, Barca, Atleti. Those are the ones that, of course, are attractive. And it's, let's see where this ends up, because you guys have been saying right now we're talking one game. But if it works, it's not going to be one game, is it? It's going to be 2 or 3 or 5 or 10, and how that works out in the longer term is going to be really, really interesting. But definitely, look, in terms of the benefits, La Liga have some very, very smart business people involved in their strategy. I've spoken to some of them, and they clearly believe this is absolutely fundamental in terms of growing the league.
Jeff, we mentioned MLS, just going back to that, obviously, what MLS Cup is at the start of December, end of November, and you think of the coverage that this game is going to get, it's going to eclipse that so much. That's got to frustrate the league, isn't it? That they're, despite trying their hardest, they're not going to generate anywhere near the amount of coverage for their big event, their Super Bowl, compared to this.
Well, there's not only that, there's the World Cup draw that's taking place around the same time as MLS Cup. So, I think in terms of capturing mindshare, I mean, MLS is going to be really up against it. But, MLS, the people that have run the league for many, many years, the owners, they are long-term investors. They're strategic investors. And so, I don't think they're going to be completely worried about one game. But I think, as everyone has been saying, me included, all of this is going to depend on how many games are actually going to be in the U.S. market and from how many leagues. And so, I think MLS is calm at the moment. I mean, I think they're being very thoughtful, as they tend to be, in terms of seismic changes to the soccer landscape in the United States and Canada. But certainly I think it's going to make them sit up and take notice. They're going to be a little worried about what the long-term ramifications are. But they are strong believers in their league, and they've done a great job of creating local interest. I mean, I think the challenge has been creating national interest, especially when it comes to a TV rights deal. So I think that's going to be another thing to worry about going forward for them. Are they going to be able to draw more fans to their product? And I think that is going to be made more difficult if you've got games like this one taking place on U.S. soil.
One last thing, Jeff, you've seen Pochettino again this week. He was very angry at you last time you two met. Why does he hate you?
If he really wants to hate me, he can take a look at the lineup that I've been putting out on a monthly basis. I'm joking, of course.
Well, yes, I think.
Looking forward to seeing
I think having Jesse Marsh in charge, I think, upset him a bit as well in that lineup. Thank you very much, Jeff. Much appreciated, mate. Just a reminder, then, La Liga continues in Spain when we return from the international break. Atleti taking on Osasuna on the Saturday, and then on Sunday, Getafe against Real Madrid. Why can't I see Barcelona on that list? There it is. Barca Girona is the early game on the Saturday.